Before we begin, a note for the record. This documentary uses verified public reporting to anchor its timeline, and it uses dramatized reconstruction to show how a modern constitutional monarchy would respond to a sudden private crisis in the age of leaks, algorithms, and permanent surveillance, where we describe closed-door conversations. We are showing what is credible and plausible, not claiming access to any child's private medical file. London is a city that understands power the way sailors understand weather, not as a theory, but as pressure in the air. And when pressure changes, the whole skyline seems to feel it. In Britain, that pressure doesn't only sit in Parliament. It sits in newsrooms, in police briefing rooms, in the quiet choreography of motorcades, and inside the oldest institutions still expected to look effortless on camera, the Crown. In the last 2 years, the monarchy has been forced to do something it was never designed to do well: narrate vulnerability in real time. In February 2024, Buckingham Palace publicly announced that King Charles III had been diagnosed with a form of cancer discovered during treatment for benign prostate enlargement, beginning a schedule of regular treatments while postponing public-facing duties. The palace said he remained wholly positive and would continue state business. Then, in March 2024, the ground shifted again. Catherine, Princess of Wales, appeared in a recorded message and disclosed that cancer had been found following abdominal surgery, and that she was in the early stages of a course of chemotherapy. She spoke not like a symbol, but like a parent managing shock and trying to keep 3 children's world from splintering under the weight of public obsession. This was not simply personal tragedy. In a country where the monarchy is woven into national identity, tourism, diplomacy, continuity, royal health becomes a matter of public anxiety. And public anxiety is not an empty emotion. It is a resource that can be exploited, because in 2024, the information battlefield didn't just surround war zones. It wrapped itself around hospital corridors and family photographs. When an official Mother's Day image of Catherine with her children was pulled by major photo agencies over digital manipulation concerns, Catherine later acknowledged editing something. Subtle but important happened. Trust took damage in the smallest cracks, and conspiracy rushed in to widen them. In a monarchy, credibility is not a luxury. It is structural support. Lose too much of it, and the institution doesn't collapse with a bang. It sags slowly. Public faith phrase. Rumor becomes analysis. Analysis becomes assumed fact. And soon, the palace isn't steering the narrative at all, it's bracing for impact. By September 2024, Catherine released another message, this time saying she had completed chemotherapy and would return to a light schedule, describing recovery as long and day by day. It was hopeful, but it was also a reminder. Illness doesn't end when the cameras stop rolling. In January 2025, Catherine confirmed that her cancer was in remission after a visit to the Royal Marston Hospital where she had been treated. An unannounced appearance that carried the quiet force of someone stepping back into the light on her own terms. And in December 2025, the king marked a new milestone, recording a message for Stand Up to Cancer and signaling that his treatment schedule would be reduced in the new year. Shifting into what palace language described as a precautionary phase, careful optimism, deliberately phrased. A monarch learning to speak to the public in the vocabulary of medicine, that's the verified timeline. Those are the facts as the world has been allowed to see them. Now here is the part the public rarely witnesses. What these moments teach the palace behind the velvet rope. They teach that silence is no longer neutral. Silence is a signal, and signals get intercepted. They teach that privacy is no longer a wall. It's a negotiation with staff, with technology, with hospital systems, with the press, and with the invisible logic of social platforms that can turn a rumor into a global headline before breakfast. And they teach something darker. Once a family's vulnerability becomes public, it becomes weaponizable. Not just by tabloids hungry for clicks, but by online networks that thrive on chaos, and by political actors who understand that destabilizing a symbol can destabilize a country's mood. So imagine a winter morning in London, cold. Enough to turn breath into smoke. Ordinary enough that commuters still trust the timetable. And somewhere behind fortified gates and heritage stonework, a different timetable is running. One measured in scan appointments, specialist consultations, and the quiet triage of a family deciding what the world is allowed to know. In our reconstruction, the crisis does not begin with a dramatic collapse. It never does. It begins the way real crises begin, with small deviations that don't fit the child you know. A burst of energy that fades too quickly. A change in appetite. A moment of hesitation on stairs. The kind of details that would mean nothing in a stranger's life but mean everything in a mother's. The palace, for all its ceremony, is a machine built to manage external threats, crowds, intrusions, geopolitical optics, security risks. It is less practiced at managing the internal enemy that comes without malice. Uncertainty and uncertainty inside any institution triggers a familiar reflex: control the perimeter, restrict access, reduce movement, lower the profile, review schedules, tighten communications. Not because the institution is cold, but because the modern media ecosystem is in the public imagination. A palace is a place of rooms. In reality, it is a place of systems, communications teams, private secretaries, protection officers, legal advisors, medical liaisons, and protocols built from the scars of past crises. When something threatens to spill, it doesn't spill into the hallway first. It spills into calendars, into unavailable blocks, into last-minute substitutions, into the sudden absence of children from scenes where they're expected to be. Outside, the cameras do what cameras do. They count. They compare. They zoom. They build a narrative from subtraction. Inside, the adults begin to live on two separate clocks: the public clock that demands steadiness, and the private clock that demands honesty. In our reconstruction, the communications team drafts options that all sound polite and all taste like ash. One option leans on a familiar phrase, a routine matter. Another suggests a partial acknowledgement without details. A third insists on silence until there is absolute clarity, but absolute clarity is rare in medicine. And even rarer when the patient is a child. Here the monarchy faces a dilemma. That is not political, but becomes political the moment it touches the public. If you speak too soon, you risk pinning a child's life to a label that might change. If you speak too late, you let the rumor economy write the story for you. And rumor is always crueler than truth. This is the paradox of modern public life. Transparency is demanded, but privacy is never protected, and hovering over all of it is the single, most dangerous word in any palace: leak. In the age of encrypted messaging and CCTV, the public thinks leaks happen only through betrayal, someone selling secrets. But the real threat is often more banal: a misdirected email, an administrative note, a staff member mentioning the wrong detail to the wrong friend, a hospital system briefly showing more than it should. The monarchy doesn't fear only journalists. It fears the ordinary mechanics of modern life, because when the palace loses control of the timing, it doesn't just lose a news cycle. It loses dignity. It loses the ability to protect a child from being turned into a public object. And this is where the story becomes larger than one family. Britain is a nation that still projects power through symbols, flags, ceremonies, tours, tradition, the carefully calibrated presence of royals at moments of national emotion. In the strategic world, symbols are not decoration. They are infrastructure. They are how a state tells its own people, we are stable, we are continuous. We are here. So when stability looks shaken, the tremor travels across the Commonwealth, across allied capitals, into markets that measure confidence in subtle ways, even into adversarial ecosystems that track social mood like a targeting map. A sick monarch is not just a patient. A sick heir's family is not just a household. It becomes a story that can be pushed, twisted, exploited, because attention itself is power now. And outrage is the fastest currency on earth. In our reconstruction, the palace realizes the perimeter has already been tested. Not with an attack, worse, with curiosity. A reporter's inquiry dressed as polite concern. A tabloid editor hinting at rumors. The kind of contact that signals someone, somewhere, has found a thread, and once a thread is found, it gets pulled. That is the moment the family must decide. Do we let strangers break this story in pieces messy, speculative, invasive, or do we step forward and say only what must be said? On our terms, with restraint that dares the public to respect it. Somewhere inside that decision is a mother, not a symbol, staring at the fact that her child's future may now be negotiated with the outside world. And as the winter light fades early over London, the palace prepares for the most delicate operation it can attempt. Not surgery, not security, not diplomacy, but the controlled release of truth in a country trained to consume it like spectacle. The next morning, the air inside the royal household feels different. Not louder, not dramatic, just tightened. As if the building itself knows that by nightfall, the world may be leaning against its gates, asking for answers it has no right to demand and refusing to look away. For the record, no verified diagnosis has been publicly released about any royal child in the way rumors often claim. What follows is a dramatized reconstruction of how a modern palace would respond if a private family medical crisis began slipping into the public bloodstream. A palace does not panic like the public imagines. It doesn't explode, it compresses. Doors close. Footsteps soften. Conversations become shorter, coded, deliberate. Because in 2025, the threat isn't only the crisis. The threat is the narrative escaping containment, turning a family emergency into a global product packaged, monetized, and archived forever. The institution has learned that lesson the hard way, in full view of the world. In February 2024, Buckingham Palace confirmed King Charles III had been diagnosed with a form of cancer discovered during treatment for benign prostate enlargement, and that he began regular treatment while postponing public-facing duties. The language was careful, reassurance without false promises, privacy without vagueness. A monarchy speaking in the grammar of modern medicine. Then came March 2024. Catherine, Princess of Wales, looking straight into a camera, saying cancer had been found after abdominal surgery and that she was in the early stages of chemotherapy. She emphasized something crucial. Time was needed to explain it to the children, privately, in a way that would not scar them. That wasn't sentiment. It was strategy, family strategy. Because when the public believes it is entitled to everything, children become collateral. A week can change how a country reads silence. And in March 2024, silence became combustible. On Mother's Day, an official family photograph was released, then rapidly pulled by major agencies. The Associated Press issued a photo kill saying the image appeared manipulated and did not meet standards. Reuters, Getty, AFP, others followed. Catherine later apologized, admitting she had experimented with editing. The practical result was brutal. Even when the palace tried to reassure, it accidentally fed suspicion. Trust, once cracked, invites conspiracy to move in like damp. So, in this reconstruction, when an alarming private situation emerges around the youngest child of the Wales household, the palace response isn't theatrical, it's operational. Because they now understand a terrifying truth. ***, silence is not neutral anymore. Silence is a signal. ***, and signals are intercepted. The first danger does not arrive as a headline. It arrives as a soft question from a journalist who pretends to be checking a detail. Then a second message, concerned, polite, almost friendly. That tone is never innocence. It means somebody has a thread. And the moment a thread is found, the press, traditional and online polls until something tears. In the public imagination, leaks happen through betrayal. In reality, leaks often happen through systems. A hospital network, an administrative note, an appointment code, an access log that reveals one detail too many to someone who shouldn't see it. In the screenshot era, you don't need the full file, you only need enough plausibility to let rumor run at full speed. Inside the palace, containment begins. The circle narrows. Names are replaced with internal references. Schedules are scrubbed, patterns erased, movements deroutinized. Not because everyone is suspected, because The palace is trying to deny the outside world the one thing it thrives on: predictability. In the communications room, three options sit on the table like weapons. Speak early, starve the rumor. Speak partially, explain absences without exposing the child. Or stay silent until doctors deliver absolute certainty. But medicine rarely gives absolutes on demand, and the internet interprets delay as guilt. That is the modern trap. The public demands transparency while refusing to grant patience. The hardest decision, then, is no longer public relations. It is parenthood under surveillance. Because once a child's name is welded to a medical narrative, it follows them through school gates, through adolescence, through every awkward stage of growing up while strangers online pretend they're discussing public interest. Pressure escalates in the most familiar way. An editor asking for comment before we publish. It's not a request. It's a timer. The hidden message is simple: speak now, or we speak for you. And the palace knows what that means. Strangers will shape the child's identity into a headline, then sell it back to the country as entertainment. So the statement, when it finally takes shape, is not a clinical memo. It is a boundary. It confirms what must be confirmed: ongoing medical care, a serious family focus, a request for privacy, and refuses the details that would trap a child inside a label. Because details, once released, are not information. They are permanent artifacts. This approach isn't invented. It's learned. Catherine's September 2024 message after completing chemotherapy emphasized that recovery is long, that the path is day by day, and that she would return gradually. In January 2025, she publicly said she was in remission after visiting the Royal Marsden Hospital again. Clarity without spectacle. The King's timeline reinforced it too. A brief hospital observation in March 2025 due to treatment side effects, followed by continued cautious updates, never giving the public everything, but giving enough to steady the nation. And in December 2025, King Charles appeared in a stand-up to cancer message, calling it a milestone that his treatment schedule would be reduced in the new year, with the palace describing a shift into a precautionary phase under monitoring. It was the model the institution now relies on: honesty used as armor. Night deepens. Drafts get shorter. Every extra word is cut, because every extra word can become an entry point for speculation. The palace does not sleep, because it understands the modern truth. The first version of a story spreads the farthest, and the correction arrives too late to save dignity, and by the time morning approaches, the household is no longer deciding whether to speak. It is deciding how to speak in a way that shields a child from becoming public property.